Hey, World of Warcraft fans, we have a tiny, surprising class tuning that Blizzard has announced for this week of patch 12.0.7. So depending on when you watch this video, the changes will go live on the 1st. Or they have already gone live if you're watching this video a bit later. Nevertheless, Blizzard is currently buffing the weakest classes in the game a bit, and we'll just take a look at what you can expect here. If you like all this, as I said last week, I'm doing all this in my free time alongside my job. And right now, yeah, it's summer, not much is happening in WoW. It's relatively difficult, especially with World of Warcraft. That's why I know it's annoying. I know it gets on your nerves, but if you want to support me, subscribe, comment, leave a like. Every little bit helps. And with that, let's get started. Basically, I have to say there aren't that many classes included, so it hasn't been adjusted for every class. But, according to Blizzard, the weakest ones have already been included here. They referred to both Mythic Plus and Raid because the first one up is the Balanced Druid. And if you take a look at it, we see here all damage increased by 4. We see here in the Raid, at least in Voidspire, the Balanced Druid isn't that bad. It's right there, yeah, right in the middle, I'd say, here in the Mythic Raid. So that's actually fine. But if you look at the other side, how it looks in Mythic Plus, the Balanced Druid is one of the worst classes there. And in terms of damage, so if you only look at damage and not even those scores, then the Balanced Druid is the worst DPS in 16 keys and higher. That's why adding 4 more on top makes sense. I'll be honest, I don't know if that's going to be enough to close the gap. The difference compared to top DPS in Mythic Plus isn't just 4% right now, but yeah, compared to Unholy DKs on average, it's just 50k DPS less that a Boomkin brings. So, I don't think 4 is going to be enough, but of course, in the end, we don't want to complain. A buff is a buff, and we'll take it. Otherwise, as you may have already seen, Feral is also there. The kitty is better than Boomkin in Mythic Plus, but it's really, really bad in raids, and that's why Blizzard is making adjustments here. All damage is increased by 3 and melee attacks do 15 more damage. So yeah, all your abilities do 3 more, and the auto attacks, the white hits, are at 15 more. We also have Rampant Ferocity here. That's an AoE effect that does 15 less damage. So I think even though Blizzard hasn't written anything about it, I think they're addressing the balance with this. Not so that the spec gets even stronger in Mythic Plus, but mainly to get buffed in the raid, and on top of that, Rip gets another 5 added to it. Then we have the Resto Druid, and I find the whole thing quite interesting. If you take a look at it, you can check on Highland, and you'll see that when it comes to DPS, they're really doing pretty badly. So, Druid healers are really falling behind, but in return, they get all their damage increased by 15. That's actually pretty nice, I'd say. On the other hand, in bear form, they deal 25 less damage. And I'm just thinking, how do you come up with this change? Because, sure, it's not really a big deal in the end, but I never see a heal druid dealing damage in bear form. That's why I don't know if this change is really necessary. But, oh well, it's just included. And as we can see here, it's also, yeah, definitely justified. In Mythic Plus, things don't really look any better either. There, the Druid is also the worst DPS spec. So it's actually pretty good. Otherwise, we have Evoker Devastation. 3 more damage on top of that, and that's definitely necessary there at that point. Because that spec is clearly worse than Augmentation. Because you have to say in raids it's okay, but again, for example, in Mythic Plus, that spec really sucks. Just like Frost DK, Destro, and so on and so forth. Next, we have the Arcane Mage. All abilities deal 3 more damage. Again, Mythic Plus, If the spec is okay, it's in the middle of the pack. In raids, it's really bad. So that's why the buffed specs you see here are really, really bad in at least one category. And that's why they get these buffs pushed onto them. Next, we still have healers. Namely, the Holy Priest. Holy Word Serenity and Holy Word Sanctify. Healing increased by 20%. I don't play Holy right now, so I can't tell you how much of an impact this will have, but the last change I actually find really, really nice. Resto Shaman 4% more healing overall. And that's actually quite interesting, because the Resto Shaman actually isn't that bad. But we also see here in Mythic Raid he's lagging a bit behind. But in Mythic Plus, he's the second best choice after the Monk. I already said that I definitely want to level my Shaman now with Turbulent Timeways. We'll also play him in Mythic Plus. That's why I'll definitely take a 4 healing buff with me. Will he be able to knock the Monk off the platform with that? Probably not. But it's a buff that you like to take at this point. And I think with this change, Holy Priest could get a bit closer in raids. Shaman definitely will. But here you can see the Paladin. They definitely should have done something for healers in raids, in my opinion. And even with the DPS, if you take a look, some classes are still way behind. Something like here, Destro Warlock performs well in raids, but is absolutely bad in Mythic Plus. That's why those are the kinds of classes where it might have been difficult with flat damage increases. But I don't know. Maybe they could have adjusted a few other things there. That's why Frost is another example of that. It's too good in raids to be buffed again, just because it's too weak in Mythic Plus. And I would have liked them to say, okay, we're not going to give it a buff, but maybe we'll restructure it a bit to make it more competitive in Mythic Plus. In the end, the next big change will come with patch 2.1. The patch will probably be released in August. So let's wait and see what else is coming our way. With that said, thank you very much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, have a great time, and take care.